what a gorgeous morning and what gorgeous singing. Happy Thanksgiving this week. I know I'm blessed and grateful. Who here will be getting together with family this week? Anybody getting prayed for because somebody thinks you might be going to hell? Isn't it good that we think that's funny? And I have a blessed in-law. You know now that I'm right, Michael? Anybody getting together with friends? You're going to pray for some of them. They need it, yeah. Whatever you have planned, may you and all of us take a moment to just appreciate and enjoy the gratitude and getting together, the whole experience, all of it. I want to introduce myself by sharing the miracle story in brief about how I came to be in Hawaii. Basically, when I was in college, I found myself pregnant, didn't know what to do, didn't think I could raise a baby. So I came to Hawaii for some reason and gave that baby up for adoption. And here's the beautiful news. 2 years ago, we found each other through DNA. And he lives in Hawaii still, and he and his family opened their hearts to me and my husband. And so I retired from Unity of Des Moines, and I get to live in Hawaii and get to know that part of my family. It's just a miracle every day. And I wanted to share that with you, how blessed and lucky I am to be here. This morning, I want to talk about a spiritual practice that I like. Transcendent interval training. Remembering to choose kindness for all beings, including ourselves. Let me break that down. Transcendent is a nod to why we are here. We are here to evolve our spiritual self. We are here to involve what I like to call the big S self. That's big ESS, just so we're clear. Big S self, while we're in a human body. Interval training is my way of saying, remembering to choose kindness for everybody, including ourselves. Here's some vocabulary words for the day that will help all of us get the most out of this talk. High impact interval training. Now there's some really interesting science about how high interval impact training is very good for anti-aging. And what that is, it combines short bursts of all-out exercise followed by short periods of rest. So physically intense work intervals, they might last from 15 seconds to 4 minutes. And the point is you get your heart rate going to almost from 80 to 95% of what your heart can do. Person's maximum heart rate. And then you take time and you work out less. Our recovery intervals last about the same time and are performed at a much lower intensity. So remember that physical high-intensity training and when we get into the spiritual part. Now, another vocabulary word I want to teach you, it's new to me because I just heard it last week and fell in love with it. It's SMELF, S-M-E-L-F. One of the people who I was on a book group with was talking about her small self, and she just said SMELF by accident, and I jumped on it. Because I love that. In Unity, one of the ways we talk about the small self is we might call it the personality self. We might call it the ego self. But I am in love with calling it the SMELF. There's something about the SMELF that makes me love that part of me just a little bit more. And I need help with that. Back to the big S self, which is the Christ in us. The Buddha in us, the higher power. We all know what that is. The next word I want to explain is Advaita, or non-duality. Advaita means non-dual or not two. This oneness is a fundamental quality of everything. Everything is a part of and made of one non-dual consciousness. In unity teaching, we recognize non-duality when we say, there is only one power and one presence active in my life, or OP2, one presence, one power. We also recognize that when we say, there is nothing and no one against me. That is also how we recognize non-duality. Now I want to talk about one more word, which is empathy. Empathy to me is a state of being which I use to describe being present with someone else or myself. Basically, it means that big S self is present. We are the energy of spirit in action. And your job is to embody you. My job is to embody me. I'm going to use a little bit from this book, Michael A. Singer's The Untethered Soul, because I love the way he describes Advaita, non-duality. And I've got a couple of bullet points that I'm going to share with you that explain in a beautiful way what non-duality is and how it is a beautiful part of our spiritual practice. Now, Michael A. Singer writes, the voices in your head cause you misery. Anybody here have any of that? He just says, ignore them. A closed heart depletes energy. Keeping an open heart creates energy. And here is one of our jobs, to notice what is closing our heart. It's the voices. It's those voices in our head that are telling us things that are closing down our heart. Here's what the answer is. The answer is to find our observer. To find out who is in here. That's the practice of Advaita. It involves inquiring with curiosity, which means opening to everything. The path to unconditional happiness means not getting caught resisting. And this is what Michael Singer says that I just truly love, and this is the sticking point, and this is where I trip. On the way to unconditional happiness, all the stuff you've been hanging on to will come up for release. What? Yes. And here's some good news. Don't worry, you won't have to look for it. It will just happen. Every time you hear the voice that brings up some unhappiness, it's our opportunity to welcome it in. We want to facilitate or practice or have it in our minds and hearts to keep this attitude of welcome. And curiosity can help us. For example, when you have one of those voices and you notice that you're feeling that you're on the path to unconditional happiness and you're tripping over something's annoying you, or a person might. And instead of immediately, or maybe after, let's face it, we're all judging. Maybe you judge them and then you say, wait a minute, let me be curious about this. I wonder if that's true, that voice in my head. I wonder if that irritation is even true. I wonder, what is that all about? This wise teacher also says another great bullet point, just stop not enjoying. So whatever is happening, even if you're not enjoying, enjoy it. which will bring up all of it, and we feel it, and then it goes through us, and we release it. Now, sometimes I need to have a parts conversation. I need the big S self to listen to myself, and vice versa. And this is when remembering that we choose kindness toward all beings, including ourselves, that's when this is key. Now, let's get back to interval training. The way I was introduced to actually using interval training was that about, I think maybe 8 years ago, I ran a few half marathons with my son in California, Disney half marathons, which were super fun. And the trainer at Disney told everybody how to do this running. And that is you run 4 minutes and then you walk 1. And you don't speed walk, you actually stop and walk. You use different muscles when you're running than from when you're walking, and obviously different heart rate. And I found that really was the only way I could have ever trained and ran a half marathon. Now, I'm not exactly sure if when I was running I'm pretty sure I was not exercising the high intensity 80% of my heart rate. But it's the same idea, and it was the switching it up that enabled me to actually do a whole half marathon, or all of the half marathon might be a better way to say it. Now, high intensity is more intense. And I'm just starting to add that to my exercise routine. I've always liked to run and walk, and now I'm adding in I have a timer, and it reminds me, and I also am now adding in a minute of like running really fast, or half a minute, or whatever, 15 seconds, and noticing how that is helping. And it's a good anti-aging. My spiritual practice, which I like to call a mashup with Advaita and empathy, really has to do with mixing it up in that point when I'm tripping up. I want to remember this when I am not actually in the Advaita or the non-duality, when I am not in knowing the oneness. And any separation, when you're practicing Advaita, any separation is, of course, not non-duality. But since I'm a human being having this human experience, and my brain splits off into voices many times a day, I'm going to make an allowance or a space for that. It's a lot like the way, if you're looking at a mosaic, you see a beautiful picture, and then you go up close and you see the parts. It's helpful sometimes to look at each little part of the mosaic. You want to see this part is red, that part's slightly orange, and then step back and see the whole picture. It's good to be able to go back and forth in our spiritual life and how we are treating ourselves. So I use this on the way to unconditional happiness, when some of the stuff that I have been hanging on to will come up. Well, I actually haven't given a talk for almost 1.5 years, and I'm really happy to be here. And one of the things I had kind of forgotten about is whenever I pick a topic, I'm asking the universe to bring up something in my life to deal with it, so I have something juicy to tell you. And sure enough, it was a little late this time. It happened Friday. I picked the topic a couple weeks ago, but Friday was the day that my stuff came up to greet me. It was a very good practice day for me. So my husband, Roland, has really awesome, beautiful care from the VA in Hawaii, and also we've experienced it in Des Moines. We're getting used to how it works in Hawaii. And, of course, with COVID, things have been different. And some of the time, I like to think of myself as a partner, and we go to appointments together, both of us, so that 2 people can remember whatever the doctor's saying. And I had actually been looking forward to this appointment on Friday where he was going to see one of his main practitioners because I hadn't met this person. And there was a few things I wanted to ask. We get up there Friday, and the nurse starts to bring him in and says, oh, we're just going to take his vitals. You can wait out here. So I'm used to that, so I wait out there. And then in about 20 minutes, I notice, wait a minute, nobody came out to get me. So it happens to be a glass door that's locked with a code. So I'm standing at the door looking a little bit, I'm pretty sure I'm looking annoying like this. Like I didn't actually knock, but I was vibing really hard. Anybody walking past, they would come talk to me and let me in. So finally, I think I finally got through because like 3 people came at once. Like, do you need help? Yeah, you guys took my husband back to get his vitals, but I'm supposed to be in the appointment. Like, okay. And, oh, I'm sorry, said the nurse, but this doctor doesn't want anybody extra. I'm taking a breath. I'm thinking, oh, but we like to have 2 people just so there's someone else who can remember things. She said, I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. Well, it doesn't even sound that bad when I'm telling it to you, but let me just tell you. I texted the exploding emoji head to my husband because that's what he needed right in the middle of his appointment. And I said, I am going to wait for you outside of the building. So I went outside of the building, which is it's right next to the Pink Hospital Tripler up there on the pretty hill. So I go out there, and I'm in the building, and I know everything's perfect, but I knew it somewhere here that everything was okay, but something happened, boy. My little smelf got so triggered. I started walking around the hospital. It's on a big hill, so I just kind of went outside. I was looking for a bench, and then I just kept walking all the way around. So I walked up the hill, and I walked down, and I walked all the way around it. And the whole time, I am like tears, and I have my mask on, but I'm just like, I know that I am not anywhere near my big-ass self. It is my tiny little self who is so upset. And I even know that. And I know that I was reacting to something really deep. And I wasn't even sure how to do it. I'm actually grateful that I took myself outside of the room. And I'm grateful that I took myself outside into the beautiful grounds and just walked around. And I'm embarrassed to tell you that that didn't actually handle everything, and that when Roland came out from his appointment, I had to be a little fussy and say, well, why didn't you insist that I came in? And he's just like, yeah, and anyone feel free to give Roland empathy after the talk. So we drove home, and then I had to take myself to be alone for a little bit. But here's what happened that I'm actually really proud of. I tried a few affirmations that I use, and I tried to say, I'm a child of God, and a few other things, and it just wasn't working. I couldn't, there was no getting out of it. There was no opting out. So instead, I actually decided to have some empathy for myself and let my little self feel. And it was surprising. Obviously, this had nothing to do with the poor nurse, and it had nothing to do with my beautiful patient husband. It had something to do with when I was a child, and that there was something about not mattering or that my needs weren't important that got really touched on Friday. And actually, the part that I'm excited about is that I was able to be with it. And I eventually was able to go out, and my beautiful patient husband could listen to me. Oh, but let me just go back a step. Before that, I was halfway there, and I said, I did the talk, I'm really sorry. I know it had nothing to do with you, and here's what you could do in the future if I'm upset like that. You could say, honey, I'm so sorry you're upset. What can I do for you? Would you like some ice cream? And so then, so I told that. Then I went by myself again and really felt it. It was a surprising amount of grief and sadness that my little unhealed self had to deal with. And I got to the point where my big S self was able to put arms around my little self. And together, we were doing some grieving and being with the sadness. And then when I went out again for maybe the third or fourth time to talk to my very patient husband, I said, you know what? Even though I said these are the things you could do next time, you don't even need to. I figured it out, or I figured out that what I really needed was to be sad and have some grieving over the times when what I needed didn't matter, over the times when I was alone and not getting what I needed and misunderstood, or whatever those things were that were so deeply embedded in my core. And I was able to actually get to some non-duality with the big S self and the smelf into one. And we were still sad the whole rest of the day. I was able to treat myself with tenderness and enjoy the tender feeling and the sadness and let it be there. Just let it be there. So sometimes I actually can choose out of misery. There are times when I can say, am I going to let this affect my peace? And I can go, no, I am not. And I can snap out of it. But there are other times I have got to do the process. And these are the miracle minutes. The power is in the moment I notice I am miserable, allowing myself, instead of avoiding or trying to stuff it, to allow myself the time and space and to have some honest empathy with myself. Now, here is one more little tweak. If you ever find yourself in the place, maybe you're feeling guilty about something, where you're not able to, you know you want to get yourself unmiserable, and you know you should give yourself some empathy, but you just can't quite get there, go ahead and think of somebody you love. We all have somebody who we can almost always feel the love in us for. Babies are really good for me, especially if they're not in the next room crying. Pets are wonderful. I mostly use my kids and my husband if he's not in the next room crying. This works every time. Let me just tell you this in a 1, 2, 3 process. When you're noticing you are not enjoying the present moment, think, time for some transcendent interval training. The transcendent reminds us there is indeed a big S self. The interval reminds us to take some time for a conversation with our self. And the training reminds us that this is a practice, that we are in practice. It reminds us to choose kindness for all beings, including ourselves. And that, again, let me say, we're in training. This is a practice. And as I am a processy person who loves worksheets and exercises, I also have a few things I'm just going to throw out. Maybe you're familiar with them. I use Colin Tipping's Radical Forgiveness worksheet. I use Marshall Rosenberg's Nonviolent Communication. I know you guys have a group going on here. I use Byron Katie's The Work and the Q process, which has many things I know that this congregation is working with. So let's practice together right now in meditation. Remembering to choose kindness for all beings, including ourselves. Let us join in oneness. Take a breath with me. I invite you to give yourself a moment of recognition. Here I am, wholly present in this exact minute. Let me remind all of us, we can feel each other along our way to unconditional happiness. We can choose to open our hearts to everything and everyone that is in this very room with us and who is watching with us on a screen this moment or whenever they are watching. Feel me and everyone else in the room and watching on the screen. Feel each of us opening our hearts to you, to each other. We are open-hearted. We are holding each part of you. We are holding you with tenderness, and as you feel our open heart, we feel your open heart. And we are in oneness. Let us be in oneness in silence together.